Up H.R. 2853, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act. For purpose of a markup, move the committee report in favor to the House. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 2853.
Without objection, the bill be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my privilege to introduce for consideration H.R. 2853, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act. Briefly, Mr. Chairman, organized retail crimes, or ORC, directly cost the United States nearly $130 billion annually, and this is direct costs. The indirect are obviously much higher. These crimes target everything from bars of soap to entire vans, trucks, train cars, shipping containers, and beyond for illegal theft and resale around the world. What may look like an isolated criminal act is far too often one spoke in a very well-oiled wheel. These criminals are members of larger networks, many of which include the more well-known criminal activities such as drug trafficking, gang crime, violent crime, and of course, fraud. Typically, once the underlying theft has occurred, the stolen goods invariably are disassembled or distributed into the broader black market, often crossing state lines and even leaving the country. Again, whether we are referring to skill saws or automobiles, everything that is for sale, transported, or imported into the United States is in play for this set of crimes. The effects of these crimes are as far-reaching as they are deep. Whether North Carolina, California, Montana, Arizona, New York, or any other state, organized retail crime has and will continue to affect all citizens. We have all seen everyday products in some parts of the country locked up behind shelves at neighborhood stores. Major retailers and small businesses alike are closing their doors in high crime areas because the cost of this type of crime is simply too steep. We've seen instances of mobs storming in an organized fashion into storefronts and raiding their merchandise. On the wholesale level, entire shipping containers are often seized before the perpetrators are even aware what the items are that they have stolen. Lesser known, but just as concerning, are instances of semi-truck drivers being attacked while they are delivering shipments. Or, in an instance close to home, a Home Depot employee who was in North Carolina was murdered over something as simple as 3 pressure washers. These crimes, of course, affect the cost of goods, public safety, employee safety, facility safety, and even national security. This legislation provides a needed federal framework that is currently absent for a set of crimes that have become inherently a national problem. Of course, localized theft, shoplifting, and property crime should remain at the local level. However, if a broader interstate or international component is realized upon investigation, law enforcement needs the necessary tools to investigate, dismantle, prosecute, and remove the involved criminal parties. To date, those tools do not exist, and this bill is a profound step forward towards meeting that need. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Ranking Member Mr. Raskin for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm very pleased to support this bipartisan legislation and to salute my colleague, Mr. Knott from North Carolina, for his leadership and his stewardship of the legislation. H.R. 2853, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, will bridge a significant enforcement gap. Organized retail theft schemes are often too complex for state prosecutors to undertake and bring down themselves, and yet too modest often for federal prosecutors to engage and pursue. In recent years, retailers have sounded the alarm about this crisis, expressing urgent concern that organized retail crime has become a significant threat both to public safety and to the retail economy, threatening the viability of businesses like cargo brokers, shippers, big box stores, and online marketplaces, as well as the basic physical safety of the people who work at these businesses. Although there's no clear definition of organized retail crime, we know what the basic problem is. Criminal enterprises which operate in a coordinated manner to commit large-scale theft of merchandise for resale or to defraud retailers and convert the proceeds into cash or crypto. It has become increasingly clear that these kinds of operations are coordinated, enabled by the most up-to-date technology and communication tools, and very hard to stop. As we learned during the Crime Subcommittee's hearing last year, we are describing a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry that grows, evolves, and adapts almost daily to the latest technological trends, security improvements, and modified business practices. And while state and local law enforcement are our first line of defense against organized retail crime, they've got limited resources and cannot always investigate crimes which cross state lines and even international borders. H.R. 2853 is necessary to address sophisticated operations that range from large-scale physical theft of shipping containers to complex computer hacking schemes that trick dispatchers into diverting whole truckloads full of goods away from their purchasers. Other forms of organized retail crime directly target consumers, such as those involving the purchase of gift cards. These schemes can also bear the hallmarks of organized crime, with advanced planning, division of labor, and the use of sophisticated means to steal people's money in new and diabolically crafty ways. Organized retail crime is centralized, organized, and sophisticated. Combating it calls for a coordinated law enforcement response. With the bill's creation of the Organized Retail and Supply Chain Crime Coordination Center, we will no longer be flying blind. The center will be tasked with collecting the data we need to understand the scope of the problem and to formulate more targeted solutions as data is gathered and shared across agencies, retailers, and supply chains. By leveraging the strengths of local, state, and federal law enforcement, the center will foster the development of a coordinated response to address large-scale organized retail crime that crosses state lines and global borders. The question's been raised about where we place the center and whether it's more appropriate to place it under DOJ rather than Homeland Security. While I'm voting for the bill today because it addresses this serious problem, we should take a hard look at why the bill is not being placed at DOJ before it goes to the floor. But I hope we can work together both to make Corca even stronger and to pass other laws to address issues with the asset forfeiture law, which I know the chairman is also concerned about. In particular, I want to work together to move a bill I co-sponsor with my friend from Wisconsin, Representative Wahlberg, the Fifth Amendment Integrity Restoration Act. At base, it would reform civil asset forfeiture laws to raise the level of proof necessary for the government to seize property, protect small business owners, and increase transparency through the whole process. The committee reported the FAIR Act to the floor unanimously last Congress, and I hope we can do it again. On balance, this legislation bridges an important and significant enforcement gap that's made it very hard to dismantle organized retail crime syndicates. A new fusion center will be a significant step in moving us in the right direction. I support 2853 and yield back.
Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina to offer an amendment in the nature of substitute.
Mr. Chairman, before you do, I forgot to enter into the record a statement in support of the bill from Representative Lofgren, who was unable to be here.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment at the desk, and this amendment removes the language concerning the facilities.
Hang on a second. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered as base text for the purpose of amendment. Chair now recognizes the gentleman to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment removes language concerning the facilities of interstate and foreign commerce and statutes related to the transportation of stolen goods and the sale or receipt of the stolen goods. This amendment upholds the principles of federalism without changing the important underlying substance of the bill. And before I yield back, I too, like Mr. Raskin, have a letter for the record from retailers and truckers I'd like to submit. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to associate myself with the comments of both Mr. Knott and Mr. Raskin. I'm a co-sponsor of this bill. I've worked with Representative Joyce on it. I want to thank Representative Joyce for working on this bill over more than one session. This is a very important thing because if we can't get to the root of coordination that's crossing state lines, then it just looks like we're having small retail crime situations that really are a part of a bigger broader concerns. So this is an important bill. I think we should move it. Hope it gets to the floor and through the Senate. Thanks so much, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also like to.
Wait, hang on. I got another California, then I'm going to come to you.
I'd be happy to yield to my friend from Southern California.
Kylie, that's news to me. Go ahead.
You're for it, right? See, this is a bipartisan bill, and maybe maybe my friend from across the aisle, but from my state, will to some extent echo my comments as to the experience we've had in California, which was one of a number of states that decided to conduct an experiment with decriminalized stealing. And shockingly, what you got was a lot more stealing. In California, for some time, you have scenes where people just walk into department stores, load up their cart with apparel totaling less than $950, and then don't even try to hide that they're walking out without paying. It was just par for the course. And we've had this culminate in these incredible smash and grabs where hammer-wielding thieves go in and just wreak havoc on jewelry stores and other places. So thankfully, things are changing in California because the people of our state passed an initiative to make crime illegal again. And you actually have dash cam footage now where thieves are riding in a police car and don't understand what's going on, why they're being arrested for something that used to carry no consequences in our state. And then they're informed that there's a new law, and they're very upset about this. So we've seen that, having consequences for associated with retail theft actually makes a difference. So I supported this bill even before we had Prop 36 in California because I wanted to use whatever jurisdiction we have under federal law to compensate for the shortcomings in our state. But it's also true that there are some forms of theft where there is direct federal jurisdiction, and we need to have appropriate penalties under federal law. So this bill does a few very important things. It increases the threshold and allows for the aggregation of the value of stolen property throughout a 12-month period at a level of $5,000 for charging purposes. It also expands the definition of monetary instrument to include things like gift cards that are increasingly used by organized retail crime rings, and it also sets up a center to combat organized retail and supply chain crime. This will go a long way towards assisting every state in the country, towards assisting those citizens that live in states that don't have appropriate criminal penalties, as well as cracking down on things like cargo theft, which has become a $7 billion problem for the trucking industry alone. So I'm glad to see the bipartisan support for this, including from my colleague from California, and hope that it gets a vote on the floor very soon. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The other gentleman from California is recognized.
I think I'd just like to add to Mr. Kiley's comments that smash and grab, this is not just about Home Depot. It's also about the small mom and pop supermarket in the corner. They would have people walking in, grabbing products and not paying for them out the door over and over again. We did pass Prop 68. 68% of the voters of California passed Prop 68. In my hometown of Santa Ana, 71% of the voters approved Prop 36, which essentially makes a lot of these crimes a felony now. So I also stand in support of this measure because this is a big issue. It's a serious issue. Let's make sure that people on Main Street can survive without being victimized over and over again. Thank you, Mr. Kiley, and I, again, support this measure. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so much. I also support this piece of legislation. I thank the bill's sponsor for working with me and several others on we think, making better language for the bill, and we look forward to the bill's positive impacts. So just give you some idea. Of course, we talk about interstate movement of these stolen goods, but if you live in a border state like this hotbed of Californians that we have on this committee, and myself as well, you know that we see this moving across the southern side of our border as well, and so this is going to be important to deal with these issues. Just a few years ago, CVS reported that in 2 minutes, the average professional thief targeting CVS steals $2,000 worth of goods in a 2-minute period. Target was growing by 50% a year, from $400 million to $600 million in missing inventory through theft and shrinkage, and that was directly impairing their profitability. National Retail Federation said they saw a 26% increase a few years ago in these types of thefts. And we also see Mexican drug cartels behind the surge in retail theft. They're organized and they bring the theft back across the border. And then earlier this year in Arizona, 2 men stole over $140,000 in merchandise from different Walmart stores across several Arizona counties. It's a rampant problem. It's multi-billions of dollars. And now the testimony that we had in our hearing, on the subcommittee hearing on this just recently, the truckers talked about how the softwares for their logistics are being hacked, and sometimes trucks are being directed to phony drop sites where they drop a container load of material, of goods and inventory, and then they leave, not even realizing that they had delivered to the wrong location because the destination had been hacked into their software for their truck. So this is a timely bill. I'm glad we're doing it, and I support the bill and will yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share my support for H.R. 2853, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, which I am a proud co-sponsor of. I thank my good friend from Ohio, Congressman Joyce, for his leadership in championing this meaningful legislation, as well as Chairman Jordan for including it in today's markup, and my colleague, Congressman Knott, for his advocacy here today. While much of the country has watched organized mobs storm stores and crime rings boldly target major retailers due to soft-on-crime policies, Florida chose a different path to not only address these crimes, but to deter them. Last year, Florida increased penalties for organized retail theft and made certain repeat offenders eligible for up to 30 years in prison. It's time to bring Florida's approach to the federal government so that we can protect consumers, keep prices low for hardworking Americans, and stop organized retail crime, especially as some states inadequately enforce the law. According to the National Retail Federation, retail larceny incidents increased by 93% from 2019 to 2023, including a nearly 90% increase in actual dollar losses. Retail stores in 2023 lost over $121 billion to retail theft, which is a stark contrast to the numbers from as recently as 2017. Organized retail theft causes massive financial losses to businesses each year, and those costs are ultimately passed on to the American consumer through higher prices. By enhancing law enforcement coordination and strengthening prosecutorial authority, Florida is prioritizing safe communities where businesses and families can thrive. The Combating Organized Retail Crime Act would establish an organized retail and supply chain crime coordination center within Homeland Security investigations at the Department of Homeland Security. This coordination center would increase collaboration between federal, state, and local law enforcement, along with retail crime associations, to help disrupt these criminal operations. I strongly urge my colleagues to support this good bill. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I associate my comments with my colleague from Florida. Organized retail crime has become increasingly sophisticated, involving multi-state criminal networks that target retail stores, warehouses, supply chains. And right now, these criminal organizations coordinate across jurisdictions. They move stolen goods through complex logistics networks. They sell them online. They've been faster than law enforcement agencies, and they've been able to share information. And it's happening in communities like mine in South Florida, although our state has been very tough on how to deal with it. This bill would strengthen collaboration among federal, state, and local law enforcement and establish a centralized coordination center within the Department of Homeland Security. Let's be clear what this bill does and does not do. This legislation is not about everyday shoplifting. We're talking about networks that steal at scale, sometimes entire truckloads of goods, and resell them through sophisticated channels before law enforcement agencies even realize they're connected. The bill focuses federal resources where they belong in organized, large-scale criminal activity. Organized retail crime is not victimless. When the theft rings coordinate across state lines and supply chains. It drives up prices for families at the register, and it puts retail and delivery workers in harm. Improving coordination to help protect employees, consumers, and supply chains and make law enforcement more effective. It's why 2853 resolution has strong bipartisan support, reflecting the broad recognition of the problem, the need for meaningful action. And let me just say to the public who goes to the store now in many areas around the country and can't get deodorant or toothpaste or mouthwash without having to push a button and wait for an attendant to come. These things are locked up behind glass. They're locked up behind plastic. It is some of the most frustrating shopping experiences. And what happens is it hurts retail, because you know what happens? Those people decide to buy online instead. They decide to go buy online, whether it's on Amazon or maybe even buying from that retailer online, which then hurts the workers in these retail stores. You go into whole stores and there's just, aisle after aisle that's now locked up. And you got to wait for someone to buy one item. And some of these items are not high ticket items. They're not expensive. They're just some of the most targeted, most stolen items. And so it's a $5 or it's an $8 item. And I watch consumers in the store just get completely frustrated. We can solve this, right? We can work with retailers to get this stuff out from behind, these, containment systems, if we help them with large-scale theft. And I think that's what this bill will do, Mr. Chairman. It is a good piece of bipartisan legislation. So let's do that. Let's help out Americans so that, they're able to buy simple items without an attendant having to get a key to sell them deodorant. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, I truly urge my colleagues to support H.R. 2835, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, bipartisan legislation that I am so proud to be a co-sponsor of. For years, the shadow economy has been growing in our cities and online, one that places consumers and our employers in danger. Finances criminal networks and also costs billions of dollars in losses. This is not a shoplifting by a person in need. This is a highly sophisticated criminal enterprise. This is not just a problem for retailers or for shipping companies. This is a threat to our public safety, our economy, and it's a threat to the rule of law. To understand the importance of this legislation, we must first understand what we're facing. Organized retail crime involves professional crews who systematically steal massive quantities of merchandise, everything from everyday essentials to luxury goods, not for personal use, but for resale. They exploit the anonymity of online marketplaces and the lack of coordinated law enforcement tools to operate with near impunity. This isn't petty theft, and you've heard that just said by my colleagues beforehand. It's a brazen, large-scale business model run by criminals who often have ties to transnational organizations involved in far worse crimes. The impact is staggering and flows far beyond a retailer's bottom line. Losses by retailers and shipping companies and increased costs from added security are felt at each and every cash register. Consumers end up paying higher prices, businesses lose sales, and less tax revenues flow to our communities. Walk into any store in any city, and you'll probably see, as we've mentioned before, locked cabinets and empty shelves. That's just some of the obvious effects of organized retail crime. Retailers are reporting that their employees are being threatened, assaulted, and traumatized while shoppers witness acts of apparent lawlessness as they shop for everyday household items or pop into their neighborhood pharmacy just to pick up their needed prescriptions. I often hear, why hasn't this been stopped? What can we do to stop this? And as we've tried to respond to this problem, we have learned there's a critical gap that these criminal networks slip right through every single time. This legislation would fill this gap in several ways. First, the bill would create a dedicated organized retail and supply chain crime coordination center, ensuring federal, state, and local law enforcement are working together, from the same playbook, sharing their intelligence and targeting these networks all the way up to the top, from the boosters to the fences to the organizers. Second, it would strengthen the tools prosecutors need to go after those individuals who routinely are stealing these goods and merchandise, those who knowingly are trafficked in stolen goods, and those at the top of these criminal organizations plan, direct, and profit the most from these crimes. Third, it would give courts the power to order convicted perpetrators to hand over all of the money that they've earned from their crimes, as they should. We have a clear bipartisan solution before us. Thank God. This bill is necessary to protect our communities, to protect hardworking employees, to provide support to legitimate businesses, and to send a clear message that these criminals will no longer be allowed to slip through the cracks. I truly urge my colleagues to support H.R. 2853, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this legislation, but I tell you, I share the concerns of some who don't want to see a new agency set up to address this issue within the confines of the Department of Homeland Security. I share those concerns because DHS is over ICE, and ICE is out violating wholesale the rights of the people of this country. But nonetheless, I think Homeland Security is the agency which, under proper leadership, has the greatest opportunity to address this issue, which does affect our Homeland Security because it's international in scope. And what comforts me about the legislation, it has a 7-year sunset to it, so we'll have to reauthorize it at that time. And every year, the Department of Homeland Security has to issue a report to Congress on its activities within this legislation, as authorized by this legislation. So I think the safeguards are in place. I'm sorry that the leadership is not in place, but the safeguards are in place, and that's why I am supporting this legislation, which addresses a harm that gets to the consumer in terms of causing prices to be increased with all of the theft that is going on and the use of the internet to facilitate the sale of these illicit goods or these ill-gotten goods, and the profits then going into organizations that are polycriminal. They're not just theft organizations or criminal organizations that deal in theft, but they deal in other areas of crime. And so I'm happy to support the legislation, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on favorably reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The questions on favorably reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered to be reported favorably to the House. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute, incorporating all adopted amendments, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes. Pursuant to notice, I call, which one are we calling up? Laurel and then Darrell, okay. Pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 6998, the Renewed Hope Act, for purpose of markup, and move that the committee reported favorably to the House. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 69.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Lee, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill we are here today to discuss is the Renewed Hope Act. I am very pleased this legislation is being considered in today's committee markup. Mr. Chairman, the exploitation of children through child sex abuse material, or CSAM, unfortunately remains a serious issue both within the United States and abroad. Law enforcement agencies currently have nearly 50,000 images and videos connected to child sex abuse cases in which the victims have not yet been identified. Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, the leading agency combating child exploitation, are on the front lines of stopping this evil. Identifying children depicted in CSAM is a crucial step to stop their ongoing victimization and to bring justice to the offenders who are producing it. Thankfully, through joint efforts between federal, state, international, and non-governmental partners, the effort to identify and rescue children has begun. In 2023, HSI Cybercrime Center executed Operation Renewed Hope. Operation Renewed Hope ran from July 17, 2023 through August 4, 2023, and was a concerted effort by HSI and other law enforcement agencies to investigate online child exploitation and abuse. The operation led to the identification of 316 victims and the rescue of 14 victims, with new victims continuing to be identified well after conclusion of the operation. In 2025, HSI completed Operation Renewed Hope 3, which ran from February 24th to March 7th. Renewed Hope 3 led to the identification of 36 victims and created over 380 investigative leads related to additional victims. We appreciate the work being done to identify victims from government entities such as HSI and nonprofits such as NCMEC and the Tim Tebow Foundation. These groups are leading the charge to identify and rescue children, and we thank you. This is a huge step forward, but Congress has an opportunity to ensure that this important work continues to get done and that we continue to identify and rescue victims of child abuse. The Renewed Hope Act will result in more perpetrators being brought to justice by allowing HSI to hire, train, and assign additional computer forensics and criminal analysts to the Child Exploitation Investigations Unit and field offices to support victim identification and rescue efforts. This experience, focus, and expertise dramatically increases our ability to successfully investigate these cases and to rescue victims. I'd like to thank my friend and co-lead from the great state of Florida, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, for her continued commitment to this legislation. I'd also like to thank Chairman Biggs for prioritizing this issue in the Crime Subcommittee through multiple hearings, as well as robust support for the Renewed Hope Act. Let us work together to unite against this evil and make the world a safer place for children everywhere. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm delighted to support this bipartisan legislation. America is seeing an explosion of child sex abuse material available and distributed online. Gruesome photos and videos depicting depraved acts against children are now increasingly available through virtually every internet-based technology there is, including social networking platforms, peer-to-peer file sharing sites, gaming sites, and mobile apps. The sickening demand for new, more egregious images and videos drives the market, resulting in the continued abuse and exploitation of children. Since the sexual violence depicted in these images and videos is most often a record of the victimization and suffering of an actual child, it's imperative that law enforcement make the identification of victims of child sex abuse material a priority. To that end, Congress must provide the resources and funding necessary to those agencies and groups charged with identifying, locating, and rescuing children at risk. The bill before us today, the Renewed Hope Act, would do just that. The bipartisan Renewed Hope Act would act as a force multiplier in the fight to identify and locate victims depicted in child sex abuse material. It would require the hiring and training of much-needed specialized victim identification personnel at the Department of Homeland Security, expanding the department's ability to identify and rescue victims of child sex exploitation and abuse. It's crucial that these new personnel perform the duties that are clearly articulated in the bill. So I thank Congresswoman Lee and her co-lead, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, for working to strengthen the bill by ensuring that these personnel remain dedicated to the specific purpose outlined in the legislation and are not reassigned to another mission such as immigration. Further, I understand that the Congresswoman will introduce an additional amendment to further protect these critical positions. With these necessary changes, I'm pleased to support the bill. We owe it to the victims of these atrocious crimes to ensure law enforcement is well-resourced to investigate, identify and locate victims, and hold perpetrators accountable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature
Without
of,
objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered base text for the purposes of amendment. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment simply makes a small change to the short title that does nothing to alter the substance of the bill. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, and thank you to the co-sponsors of this important bipartisan legislation, Congresswoman Lee and also Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz. Images and videos of children being subjected to sexual abuse continue to spread at an alarming rate. We hear about the problem of child pornography, but often in ways that are focused on the perpetrator rather than being focused on the victim. Behind every image or video of a child engaged in explicit activity, there is a child and a story about how the child came to be subjected to such abuse. And there are many questions that must be answered. Who is the child? Where are they now? Are they still being abused? And most importantly, how do we end the abuse, bring this child to safety, and hold their abuser accountable? These challenging questions are often answered by investigators, computer forensic analysts, and law enforcement officers across state, local, and federal agencies. And there has been an increasing recognition that we can solve more of these mysteries, identify and locate more victims, and end more abuse if these agencies and experts do more of this work together. In 2023, Department of Homeland Security's Child Exploitation Unit brought together dozens of analysts and officers to launch Operation Renewed Hope. This operation combined experts from Homeland Security Investigations, the Cybercrime Center, FBI, DOJ, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Virginia State Police, and 14 foreign law enforcement agencies, all to work together to identify the victims in images of child sex abuse so that they could be brought to safety. Operation Renewed Hope was repeated and expanded in 2024 and in 2025. Across these 3 years, Operation Renewed Hope led to the identification of over 450 victims, many of whom were then able to be found or confirmed safe by law enforcement. The Renewed Hope Act builds on this work by requiring the Secretary of Homeland Security to hire and train 200 investigators, computer forensics, and criminal analysts to the Child Exploitation Investigations Unit and HSI field offices dedicated to child exploitation and victim identification. It would also require the Secretary to establish procedures to allow for better coordination of child sexual exploitation investigations. It would improve the skills of investigators and analysts by authorizing a victim identification training program that will help federal, state, local, military, and foreign law enforcement, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and civil service organizations that work to prevent child sexual exploitation, making sure that all of these partners can use new technologies to break open cases. And the bill would also establish privacy protections for victims to make sure their personal information is only shared for the limited purposes of investigating child exploitation or providing services and trauma-informed care to victims. Importantly, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz and Congresswoman Lee have worked together to ensure that the positions created by this bill cannot be redirected away from this important work. And I understand that there will be a further amendment to ensure that is the case. An unknowable number of victims are still being abused and exploited. With this bill, we can enhance the expertise and manpower to uncover the children behind these images. We can hold the perpetrators of this abuse accountable. And most importantly, we can end the abuse and make sure these victims are safe, healthy, and whole again. Together, we can help victims escape, rebuild, and heal. I want to thank my colleagues, Congresswoman Lee and Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, and for everyone on both sides of the aisle for your work on this legislation, for supporting this legislation. I am proud to support it myself. I urge all of my colleagues to do so, to really stand in supporting and helping to find these victims and bring them home to safety. And I yield.
Gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I support this, this bill, and I appreciate Representative Lee and her leadership on this bill, as well as Representative Wasserman Schultz. And I submit for the record a document called the HSI Combats Child Exploitation Home and Abroad.
Without objection.
Thank you. So what is HSI, for those who don't know? That is Homeland Security Investigations, and it is a subcomponent of ICE. And 60% of CSAM cases in the U.S. are channeled through HSI. And near here in Fairfax is their compound, C3, the Cyber Crime Center. We've taken our subcommittee out there before and invite you to go with us again sometime. If you want to go, let us know, because it is amazing what they're doing there, the work that they're doing. And we owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude. HSI works to protect children from predators engaged in the production, distribution, and possession of CSAM. And as I said, they handle more than 60% of all the CSAM cases in the U.S. And in fiscal year 2024, HSI initiated 6,929 child exploitation investigations, made 4,959 child exploitation-related arrests, and identified and assisted over 1,700 victims of child exploitation. This bill will help them, and it will help our local and state law enforcement as well. This is an important bill. I am grateful for those who worked so hard to bring this to us, and I support it and encourage everyone to vote for it, and I yield back to Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized for an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Amendment to the amendment
Without
in the
objection,
nature of...
the amendment will be considered as read, and the gentlelady from Florida is recognized to explain the amendment.
This amendment simply assures funding goes directly to HSI to fund these specific critical positions for identifying victims of child abuse and exploitation. I urge support for my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Florida. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Amended amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is on favorably reporting the bill as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to be reported favorably to the House. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporating all adopted amendments, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes.